Well, hey, folks, this is the horrifying story of the Return to Nature funeral home scandal. That's the place where 190 bodies were discovered in appalling conditions. Grieving families were given fake ashes of their loved ones. In reality, they were given powdered concrete. The owners, John and Carrie Halford, reportedly lived lavishly off of stolen COVID-19 relief funds and family funds while committing unimaginable crimes. And frankly, it would have continued if the stench from the rotting bodies hadn't been reported by neighbors in Colorado. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Twisted Tales by Profiling Evil. This brand new playlist is where we dive deeply into the world's lesser known crimes and these mysterious happenings going on. Cases that often slip through the cracks, but have just as much to teach us about criminal behavior and the darkness of the human psyche than anything else. Here, we're going to explore how predators choose their victims, the methods they use to commit crimes, and the chilling tactics that they employ to avoid getting caught. Together, we're going to learn, uncover, and connect the dots on these twisted tales, one step at a time. And each episode will shine a light on these hidden corners of criminal behavior, giving us insight into not only the crime themselves, but also what we can learn to protect ourselves and others that we love. Twisted Tales is more than just storytelling. It's about awareness, education, and joining forces to make sense of the senseless. And today, we're talking about that case of John and Carrie Halford, owners of the now notorious Return to Nature funeral home in Penrose, Colorado. This thing has left a deep scar on the community and, frankly, across our nation. Over several years, the Halfords committed egregious violations of trust, ethics, and law, culminating in the discovery of nearly 190 rotting bodies improperly stored in their facility. The couple's crimes extended to defrauding both grieving families and the federal government. And their actions, they've led to criminal convictions and legal reforms aimed at preventing similar kinds of tragedies happening in the future. In October of 2023, residents of Penrose, Colorado began noticing kind of a foul stench emanating from a building owned by the Return to Nature funeral home. They called authorities, who discovered a gruesome scene. Nearly 190 bodies stacked haphazardly in a facility that lacked refrigeration. It created a biohazardous environment. Now, some of the remains had been there since 2019, and many of the bodies were so decomposed that they couldn't be identified. Some are still waiting to be examined through DNA in hopes of making a match. Imagine the scene for these first responders and crime scene investigators who had to inventory the bodies, recover them, and then work in that stench-filled warehouse that was filled with insects and rodents. The funeral home owners, the Halfords, had reportedly assured families that their loved ones had been cremated. The families had the ashes of their loved ones to prove it. However, the investigation revealed that the supposed ashes that were given to families were nothing more than dry concrete powder. Families, believing they were spreading the treasured remains of their loved ones, were unknowingly participating in a cruel deception by the Halfords. The Halfords' betrayal was not only confined to the funeral home. During the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, they applied for and received nearly $1 million in federal relief funds intended for struggling businesses. Well, instead of using this money to maintain their operation and take care of those bodies, improve their facilities, do things like pay the electric bill so the refrigerators kept working in the warehouse. No, instead, they indulged in a lavish lifestyle, according to the court. Court documents reveal expenditures on luxury vehicles such as a GMC Yukon and an Infiniti worth more than $120,000. Trips to Las Vegas and Florida, laser body sculpting procedures, cryptocurrency investments, and high-end purchases from brands like Gucci and Tiffany and Company. One report stated that they spent more on the two vehicles worth $120,000 than it would have cost to perform all of the cremations, nearly 200 of them. This financial misconduct compounded the emotional damage they caused to these families. The Halfords exploited a global crisis to fund their excessiveness while neglecting their basic responsibility to the deceased and to the deceased grieving loved ones. Well, by late 2024, the Halfords were facing extensive legal challenges at both the federal and the state level.
Of evidence for trial in the case against a Southern Colorado funeral home owner accused of stockpiling nearly 200 bodies from 2019 to 2023 instead of burying or cremating them.
John and Carrie Halford each facing more than 200 charges. Denver 7's Colette Bordelon was at John's preliminary hearing today where family members were enraged to see him out on bond.
Do you have anything to say for yourself for what you did to my child?
From the moment John Halford entered the El Paso County Courthouse,
What did you do with my son?
to the time he left, he was confronted by family members. Of the nearly 200 people whose bodies were allegedly decomposing inside of Return to Nature funeral home in southern Colorado.
I always looked up to her. She was my hero growing up.
Danica Romero was in the courtroom for her sister Amanda.
She was a daughter. She was a sister. She loved her kids so much.
Romero believes her family was given quick mix concrete instead of ashes, but says her sister hasn't been identified.
To date, 22 bodies remain unidentified.
District Attorney Michael Allen says since Halford is out on bond, prosecutors only had to present evidence to prove the most serious charges against him, money laundering, during his preliminary hearing on Thursday. The judge ruled there is enough evidence to head to trial, and if both John and Carrie Halford plead not guilty, they'll be tried as co-defendants.
The courts move slow when we get into criminal prosecution. We're hopeful that it would happen in a relatively short amount of time.
The arrest affidavits, which were unsealed on Thursday, show in 2020, the Fremont County coroner told the Department of Regulatory Agencies they were suspicious about the poor treatment of human bodies and improper refrigeration at the funeral home. The coroner said they never got a response.
You think of a funeral home and you just assume they're going to do the right thing.
Arrest papers show in the months of November and December 2021, tens of thousands of dollars were taken from the business account. That included $19,000 spent on Amazon, $31,000 on cryptocurrency, and $8,500 on laser body sculpting. Prosecutors say the Halfords also bought and sold 2 cars from 2021 to 2023. The FBI agent who testified said based on his calculations, the cost of those 2 vehicles, which were paid for in cash, would have covered the cost of cremating each body inside the funeral home twice.
I don't know what type of person even does that with someone that doesn't have a soul.
Romero wants to see this case go to trial.
My sister didn't deserve this. None of the families involved deserved this.
Hoping a trial holds some answers for the people with countless questions. Colette Bordelon, Denver 7.
And both Halfords will be arraigned March 21st. That is when they will enter their pleas.
The EPA will begin demolition of the Return to Nature funeral home later this month. The agency expects it should take about 10 days to complete. Demolition was supposed to happen last month, but was postponed due to cold weather and scheduling issues.
In October, they pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud as part of a bigger plea negotiation with that kind of capped with potential federal prison sentences at about 15 years. At the state level, they were charged with more than 200 counts, including corpse abuse, forgery, theft, and money laundering. The severity of their crimes has led for calls for stiffer penalties that reflect the pain and suffering that was inflicted on the victims and the broader community. At the heart of those federal charges against the Halfords was a code called 18 U.S.G. 1349, which basically prohibits conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Now, prosecutors allege that the couple deceived families into paying for green burials, a process that they marked as environmentally conscious. It involved a natural decomposition without embalming or traditional caskets. But instead of fulfilling those promises, authorities claimed that the Halfords stored the bodies in a condition described as horrific. Under federal law, conspiracy to commit wire fraud requires proof of an agreement between two or more individuals to execute a scheme to defraud others, the intent to deceive, and an overt act toward carrying out the fraud. For the Halfords, their alleged use of electronic communications, the emails and the phone calls, these items that they used to market and secure payments for these fraudulent services fit that criteria. If convicted, they would have faced severe penalties, up to 20 years in prison, mirroring the penalties for the underlying wire fraud itself. But in addition to those federal charges, the Halfords also faced accusations under Colorado statutes criminalizing the abuse of a corpse. This statute prohibits knowingly treating a human body in a way that would outrage ordinary family sensibility, and leaving these bodies to rot certainly met that criteria. Authorities allege that the Halfords failed to properly care for the remains that were entrusted to them through their business, leaving those bodies to decompose in appalling conditions without a refrigerator or a proper burial. In Colorado, the abuse of a corpse is a Class 2 misdemeanor, punishable by up to 120 days in jail. Does that seem like enough? And fines of $750. And while the penalties might seem minor compared to those federal charges, the moral and emotional toll inflicted on the families and the communities amplified the gravity of the alleged crimes. One of the most harrowing accounts came from a woman named Christina Page, whose son's body was among those that were left to decay. She described the devastating condition of her son's remains as she sat in court. She said, "Rats and maggots ate his face." Now, stories like hers highlight the profound emotional toll that the Halfords put upon those families, making it clear that financial penalties and prison sentences are only partial remedies for the harm that was caused to those families. And frankly, 15 years in prison doesn't seem adequate to me. And I'd like to know your thoughts, and I hope that you'll put them down below. Well, before this case happened, Colorado was one of the few states that didn't mandate regular inspections of funeral homes or didn't require professional licensing for the operation of those homes. This lack of oversight allowed the Halfords to operate without scrutiny, creating the conditions for their crimes to go unnoticed for years. And for years, these crimes went unnoticed. In response to the scandal, Colorado lawmakers jumped into action, enacting significant reforms. They now have new regulations that require routine inspections of funeral homes, proper licensing for the operators, and stricter standards for the handling of human remains. These changes bring Colorado's funeral industry in line with best practices nationwide, and the aim is to prevent future abuses like this particular case. Now, the funeral home industry largely supports these reforms, recognizing that the scandal damaged public trust. Funeral directors from across the state of Colorado emphasize the importance of maintaining ethical standards and ensuring that families can grieve with dignity. The Halfords' actions shattered the grieving process of countless families. Many had chosen Return to Nature's funeral home because of its promises of compassionate care and affordable services. Instead, they were met with deceit and neglect. Some families held ceremonial spreads of what they thought were their loved ones' ashes in meaningful locations such as mountain vistas or family properties. Others kept urns at their homes, finding comfort in the belief that their loved ones were nearby. When the truth emerged, these acts of remembrance were tainted, leaving families to grapple with the profound grief and betrayal of the truth. In court hearings, victims shared their anguish. Beyond the immediate emotional toll, many families have been left with lingering questions about how their loved ones' remains were treated inside that facility. Advocacy groups and legal experts have stepped in to support these families, providing support and resources, therapy, legal action, and community support. But how do you provide compensation for something like this?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for News 5 at 6. I'm Andy Cohen. Diane is on assignment. Demolition of the Return to Nature funeral home in Penrose will begin next week. Investigators found 190 bodies improperly stored inside of the building in October. The owners of the funeral home are facing criminal charges. News 5's Eleanor Sheehan spoke with a victim who is anxious for the building to be torn down.
Next Tuesday, the Environmental Protection Agency will begin to tear down this building. The agency says it will take 10 days.
I can't wait for it to start.
Mary Simon says it's time for the Return to Nature funeral home to be demolished.
I am hoping I can be there. I can work it out at work and stuff, so I can be there at least on the first day and watch that start to come down.
Investigators identified Simon's husband, Daryl, as one of the people whose remains were found inside the funeral home.
It's still, right now, it's still a painful reminder, and it messes with your head, just knowing it's there, but driving past it.
She says driving past the building has been difficult for her.
It's got a lot of weird negative emotions when you go past out there, and you just feel it. You know, I mean, just when you get near it, you feel something bad, and I can't wait for it to be gone. I'm so excited about that.
In a press conference on Wednesday, the Fremont County coroner says there are still 18 bodies they are trying to identify. He says the process could take months.
I have moved forward with the DNA process on those remaining individuals. My goal is to identify every loved one from this facility.
This week, EPA crews are on site doing preparations, including monitoring the air quality.
You'll start to see site deliveries being made. You'll start seeing people on site setting things up. You'll also see some of our crews going in there to do checks and starting those basic site preparations in order for us just to get to the point of starting the demolition.
They say before they demolish the building, they will disinfect it.
We're essentially using a chemical, it's called PAA, and it's essentially, for those who know, acetic acid, which is vinegar.
Once demolished, the building materials will be moved in parts to the Otero County landfill. The EPA is warning people may notice a strong odor near the funeral home, but they say there is no health risk to the public. One county commissioner says after the demolition, the future of the property is unknown. Simons hopes the area could be turned into a memorial for victims and their families.
I still believe if we could put up a memorial, everybody's name needs to go up out there, you know, make it someplace healing for us victims.
There is a ceremony to honor victims before demolition starts. That will take place here on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. It is open for families directly impacted by the Return to Nature funeral home.
The Return to Nature scandal is a stark reminder of the importance of oversight and accountability in industries that handle sensitive matters like death and grief. The Halfords crimes were made possible by systematic failings, including tax regulations and insufficient monitoring of the industry. As the legal proceedings continue, their case has sparked a broader conversation about the ethical standards in the funeral industry. And while justice for the victims may be elusive, the reforms inspired by this case represent a step forward. They signal a commitment, so to speak, ensuring that no family must endure such betrayal ever again. Moreover, the resilience of the affected family stands as a testament to the human spirit, its ability to seek justice and healing in the face of unimaginable loss. I salute all of them. I'm so sorry that they had to go through this experience. But as Colorado moves forward, the state now has an opportunity to rebuild trust in the funeral industry across the state. I'm sure there will be public awareness campaigns, community dialogues, and continued legislative efforts that will be essential in restoring that confidence. The Halford case has shown that the consequences of negligence and greed can extend far beyond the financial losses, striking at the heart of human dignity. The Return to Nature case exemplifies how a business that once claimed to offer environmentally responsible alternatives for that end-of-life care, how it could become a source of horror for families seeking solace. Federal conspiracy laws and Colorado's abusive corpse statutes are now central to holding the Halfords accountable for the alleged betrayal of public trust and the dignity of deceased human beings. This case raises a much broader question about oversight generally in the funeral industry and the safeguards that are needed to protect vulnerable families. I believe most funeral homes are upstanding and do things right. As the legal proceedings unfold, the Halfords faced consequences of not only defrauding their clients, but also desecrating the very human remains that they were entrusted to honor. Well, I'd like to know your thoughts on this video, folks. Do you feel that 15 years in prison is enough time for somebody like the Halfords who have committed a crime like this? I mean, what are the lasting emotional effects of something like this on a family member who entrusts their loved one's body to a mortuary? Please put your comments down below and make sure to read over everyone else's comments and comment on them, and let's learn together as we explore this case, a case that requires compassion and a desire to become better. Hey, remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, and make sure that you're looking for Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And if you found this video to be helpful or educational, please give us a thumbs up and share us with your friends. You can check out Profiling Evil on our website at profilingevil.com. And while you're there, I hope you'll sign up for our digital newsletter, The Bolo. And while you're on the website, you can also pick up my books, either Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, or She Knew No Fear. And now's a great time to let you know that there's a new book coming out in the middle of the year that we're really getting excited about. And I'll just end with that. Thanks so much for tuning in to Profiling Evil's Twisted Tales, a place where your curiosity and engagement keep this community alive. So again, if you found the video to be intriguing, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell so that you never miss an update. And of course, share Profiling Evil with your friends. Thanks again, folks. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.